And a very pleasant good afternoon again. This is the joint meeting of the two government operations committees in the Senate and the House. While I can, I'll just remind people it's Valentine's Day. Please make sure that you show a sign of affection to your other at some point today. I'm hoping again that we can go through, and if you could, if you have a question, I don't want to ever not take questions, but it might be even more beneficial if we let Lauren and Sean finish. And then if there's time after to question. And we're going to do it again next week, probably. So the good news next week is the Senate doesn't have a floor. The pro tem is going to be away at conference on Thursday and Friday next week. So we don't have a floor session. So hopefully we can even get in here at 12:30 or 1 o'clock.
We can have a conversation about making that.
And work for a couple of hours. And thanks everyone for your attention. So I believe we start on page 3 at the top.
Well, again, for the record, Lauren Hibbert, Deputy Secretary of State, and I have with me
Sean Shannon, Director of Secretary of State.
So at the top of page 3 is the beginning of the discussion about school board meetings. And these committees of jurisdiction meetings are very important, open meeting law, and all the considerations therein. Off the top of the considerations for the Secretary of State's office is just to flag that there are some policy decisions here about if there's a minimum number of meetings for a district per year, and if there's a minimum number of meetings in each ward. Because we were looking at those districts, some of them are very large, and we would recommend that there be a meeting in every ward in 1 year. There are implications with open meeting law, or as it's referred to in the meeting in the remainder of the memo, OML. School board districts will be decision-making bodies under the open meeting law that was enacted last year. That means that they have to hold hybrid meetings. And at this point, given the size, we would recommend treating them like state bodies as opposed to local bodies. You may remember in the open meeting law, there was different requirements for state bodies that were decision-making versus local bodies that were decision-making. We would recommend that under the law, it be clarified that these are state bodies, not local bodies, so that they are required to be recorded is the big distinction. And the reason is the districts are large, people may not be able to travel, people should be able to see what's happening at these board meetings, and the recording has a lot of benefits to that. And then that this recording would be posted on a district website. I see there's a question.
I answered it by reading the memo you sent, so never mind.
The next piece is the local advisory councils. This is a piece that, in full transparency, the Secretary of State has the least knowledge about based on the governor's proposal. So you'll see there's a lot of things where it says policy decision, or you may hear me say that. The size, this is really a policy decision. The initial legislation should determine a minimum number of people and types of roles, but there would be one thing that we were thinking about is if the principal of the school could expand it. And right now, the number of councils, the administration's proposal recommends what we have put in this memo as hyper-local councils, which is 1 per school. So, that's another policy decision for this body. Of course, we care about how people would be chosen to serve on the local advisory council. The governor's proposal doesn't address this, and we recommend that these roles would not be elected because of the complications of adding yet another election to everybody's plate, but that the principal or somebody would take applications and appoint. So that would be something that a policy decision that your bodies would need to make. The open meeting law ramifications, the legislature really needs to determine what is the jurisdiction of the local advisory councils. to understand what the open meeting law questions are. Obviously, the legislature needs to decide that on whole, but in order for us to tell you about the open meeting law ramifications, we need to know whether those bodies, the local advisory councils, are decision-making, meaning they have authority that includes supervision, control, or jurisdiction over legislative, quasi-judicial, tax, or budgetary matters. That's the distinction between decision-making and advisory. If they are decision-making, we would recommend that they not be called local advisory councils, please. Please name them something else. If they are not decision-making, please go forward with local advisory council. But if they are decision-making, please don't put advisory in their title. That's not in the memo, that's off script, but don't do that.
I welcome the rep, no problem. Understood.
Any questions about you?
Senator Byowski.
I actually do have an open meeting law question about the school boards. Under current law, are school boards required to have hybrid posted meetings? Because I remember that they're sort of carved out separately in the law right now.
Yes. I believe they're required to be hybrid, but they are not required to be recorded or posted.
Okay, thank you.
Budgets.
Budget, moving on to budget. Again, under the administration's proposal, the district board would vote on how to allocate the base budget from the state. The governor's proposal allocates a certain number per pupil, and then there's the weighting that occurs, but the districts will get a base budget based on their pupil size and the weights that apply. So the members would vote on the budget instead of the voters in the district, and the deadline for this vote should be in statute. That would not be a vote that the Secretary of State would be involved in, or the school district clerk probably would be involved in it, but the Secretary of State and the majority of town clerk would not be involved in that district board or budget vote. We do think there should be required informational meeting or annual meeting, that they're referred to interchangeably at times. And that the statute should set a time frame for that informational meeting or meetings, such as within 45 days, but no less than 10 days before, and that says election, but it should say the budget vote. That's an error on that. We do recommend that the informational meeting be held, that one informational meeting be held in each ward before the budget vote. Again, the size of the districts, those informational meetings, if people want to hear in person, there should be one informational meeting in each ward.
Senator Byowski.
That budget vote doesn't necessarily have to be like a paper ballot, like it could be just a meeting of the board like this where people vote, yes?
Yes, I mean, in some ways, the way to think about it is the wards, the people are electing a school board member, and the school board, just like they're electing a Senate member, and the Senate is making decisions on behalf of their voters, just like the school board is making decisions on behalf of their voters. But yeah, no, could be a voice vote, it could be a roll call vote, it could be a paper vote, but it would be a vote of the members of the board itself.
But it's moving away from the direct democracy mechanism that we use now, where people vote for a thing, and instead to a representative democracy where people vote for a person who then votes for the thing. Okay.
Like us.
Yes.
That is what it's doing. Then there's this other concept within the administration's proposal, which is referred to as 10% vote. We're calling it the voters' budget vote. That allows the school board district to call a vote district-wide to increase local spending for specific or special items. So this would not be for, under the administration's proposal, it wouldn't be to supplement the base allocation. It would be to build a new track, or to build a new school, or to repay the driveway. So it would be for special and specific items. Again, there should be a set time for informational meetings before that vote. And that we are recommending an informational meeting in each ward. And for this vote, it has to be done before the start of the fiscal year. Because this would be a multi-town district, and because this would be a vote of all the voters in the district, it would really need to be done by Australian ballot, and the election management system should be utilized. So it would be faster and easier to calculate the results across multiple towns. For this vote, there would need to be a polling location in each town. And we just want to flag that on an even year, this potentially, if it's not concurring with town meeting, because towns do not all have their town meeting on the same day. And also there may be crunches with the timing of knowing all of the fiscal pieces. This could potentially add a fourth election on even years and a second election on odd years, which absolutely increases the municipal clerks, the town clerk's role and work. There are some voting logistics that need to be considered. Specifically, would this voter board vote be a one-time vote, or could it go to an adjusted vote? Meaning, it fails, could the district propose a different proposal and have everybody vote again? If it's a single vote, is it a single vote on the entire proposal increase, or would this be initiatives we listed one by one? So in my previous example, should we raise property taxes 4% in our district to build a new school? Yes or no? To build a new track at this high school? Yes or no? To repave the driveway? Yes or no? So that is just the logistics. We weren't sure what the intent was, whether it was going to be specific item or whether it was going to be, should we raise, we want to do this paragraph of things as a district, and we would like to raise property taxes by 4%, yes or no? That's a policy decision.
So these potential raising of their district-wide votes, not ward votes.
That's correct.
And in the crafting of the question, can it be crafted? So my concern is that in districts this large, you're going to have a vast wealth disparity. And so there may be larger, wealthier towns that vote for this. It then harms people who can't. And can the vote be crafted in a way where it addresses some of that, or does it need to be simple enough? You know, like, we're going to raise property taxes 4% on properties over this value, or it.
I don't know. Those are policy decisions that I haven't thought of, and I don't know what the authorization would be in the statutes, but those are things that certainly should be considered. But I don't.
Okay.
So, Brian, can I ask a question?
Yes, Senator Clarkson.
So I'm just curious, if one school, so the districts may have many schools.
They absolutely will have.
So if you had a capital renovation or a new school building, it might only affect one school, but the entire district weighs in on it. That's a little challenging.
I don't.
People, anyway, just put that be in our bonnet, that imagine an entire district of, maybe several other school districts combined, maybe not wanting you to add costs. I mean, it's a big thing. People are gonna anyway, I just think that's a big piece of this that we are.
There's big shifts in this.
I think there's a few policy decisions or implications on that too, that could be envisioned. I mean, certainly in some states, they have school infrastructure be separate from the main piece or the foundation formula. I think that some of those are questions, I think, for the proposals, either the administrations or what the legislature comes to. I think if it's envisioned that the foundation formula funds some of those infrastructure work, then that would presumably come up to the place of the school district, to board members to either say, we're going to be using this amount of our base budget that we get from the foundation formula. We're going to be deciding which schools have the biggest priority, and we're going to be funding these schools this time. Or, as the Deputy Secretary says, if they do want to go out to that seek additional revenue through that voter budget vote.
I mean, just to
Or
follow
third
up.
option would be a capital fund that's completely separate from the base allocation or from the property tax increase that is decided by somebody, but it could be the districts are given a certain apportionment based on need. It could be they're given all the same amount. There's lots of ways, but that would be a third option.
Lisa and then Shane.
Thank you. So having served on a school board for 14 years with voluntarily merging schools and involuntarily merged schools, that's the hardest thing for people to grasp is that you are no longer just representing as a school board member or a voter. You're no longer just representing your town. You are representing this larger district of some kind, and this will be a little bit larger district. So those are great suggestions that you have offered that the committees of jurisdiction, I feel, should really look at. You know, how would these extra special elections for more funding
Yeah.
actually be worded? How should they be run?
Yeah, that's because you don't want Fairhaven voting on Rutland's maybe in the theater.
But they may, yeah,
Yeah.
because the hardest thing to wrap your head around is you have this new district and everybody belongs to everyone else rather
Yeah.
than taking ownership of just what's happening in your town or your school. And that is a really difficult hurdle to get over. We've been through that across the state with
Yeah,
Act 46.
and it's got pluses and minuses.
Okay,
Exactly.
Yeah, this is changing the topic a little bit, but I'm assuming that the Secretary of State's office isn't sitting around wishing they had more elections to run because you've got like spare hours in your days.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Okay, then. Not many. So I'm wondering what it's going to, if you have an idea or an estimation about what you're going to need as far as time and additional staff and additional budget and how your office is going to manage this, because it seems like you're already at your limit of what you have the capacity for. I know there's some overlap between what you do already, but
Yeah, well, thank you. We are running pretty much as tight as we can right now. We have 6 people on the elections team. But I would really be remiss if I did not say, and I really want this committee to hear, a lot of this work will fall on town clerks. And so the last section is talking about a general fund allocation or an education fund allocation to school boards, to town clerks, and to the Secretary of State. And to think about that as an every year thing, not as implementation thing. Because this will at work, I think all of those groups need to think about what it actually will cost. And as I tried to say earlier, like we are really at this moment trying to respond to the proposal and to advise you folks. We are starting to think about the costs for us, but we absolutely will have to modify our IT system. We have not gotten the scope of work for that. We absolutely will have an impact on our staff time. I think we'll need at least one position on this. But because we're talking about facilitating petitions, mailing ballots, election support, we'll have to support the voter budget vote. So that's an additional election for us potentially, because we do see, I was about to get there, but we do see some questions, concerns about putting this on town meeting day. And then if the voter budget vote is a universal vote by mail, which it could be, then that also puts work on the Secretary of State's office. So, and we provide significant training and help to the clerks as much as we can. And this is a place where we would be as strong a partner. I mean, the town clerks absolutely have that commitment from us, and this body should know. We try our best to support the town clerks whenever we can, and to provide training and ask resources. You know, all of these votes would need to be in our election management system. So we want to make sure that we are doing our best on behalf of our town clerks. But the biggest impact is actually on the town clerks comparatively. But I mean, I just gave a synopsis of the Secretary of State's impact and what we're trying to assess. But the town clerks are going to have this is yet another task that's being put on town clerks. And many of them are school district clerks now, many of them, but there's more intricacies here than what is currently happening with the school districts, now. So I think I've said that as clearly as I can. Think about the town clerks.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So the next really is this a universal vote by mail election? If yes, that whole process takes 65 days. So that is, that adds a complication, but it also adds benefit for people to consider. And then, if it is a universal vote by mail, the Secretary of State would be more involved in, operationalizing that. We would get the vote from the districts, we would coordinate, the ballot production, we work with our printer. Right now, universal vote by mail costs the state, a good amount of money, which I can get you the exact amount, but it's like $1.5 million, almost 2 million. And so that would add that expense to this voter budget vote if all the districts did one. But all the districts may not. The way that this is contemplated is the district would decide whether or not to hold this vote. The school board district would decide whether or not to hold this vote for their whole district. And that's what would be the initiating factor to have this vote occur. One district could have the 4% property tax increase vote and the next district beside them could not. It's not a mandatory every year vote in the way that the administration's proposal is currently outlined. And then that brings us to, would this be on town meeting day? In a lot of places, town meeting day is not all on the same day. Elections should all be run on the same day. And that's just a guiding principle of an election is we don't want people voting on the same issue on different days or having the results calculated on different days, even more so. And not all town meetings have Australian ballots, so that is, can be a concern. And then there is, and again, there's policy decisions that we don't know the answers to yet, but the timing issues with when the governor's, the administration's base allocation comes to the school district, when the school district has to hold their budget meeting, presumably that vote would also have in it, we're gonna ask for a 4% property tax increase in our district, and then that's what would spur the voter budget vote in the district. So there's a lot of, it's almost like we need a whiteboard to put the timeframes up, because there's chunks of time that, and pieces that we can't tell you what they are yet. But
Tanya, Jay, and then Lisa.
I'm good. I don't need.
So this property tax increase, and it may be difficult to imagine a space where the citizens are saying, hey, we need an increase to do this thing. Does this consider allowing for a voter petition for that, like we do with our charter changes where, yeah, the select board can say, oh, we're going to put this on the ballot, but actually also so can the citizens?
I think that's a policy decision for you guys to consider. Right now, I can tell you that there's a petition process for a school board to hold a special meeting or a special election as well. So, but those are things that we did not get to that level of granularity, but the law certainly could be written so that voters could have a voter initiative to have a property tax increase.
Does that complicate the process at all
Well,
from an elections administration standpoint?
you would, if you decided to do that, you would want to put in timelines of when that had to be done.
Okay.
Because yes, I mean, that, the voter board, the voter budget vote needs to happen before the start of the fiscal year. And so, and depending on what type of election, whether it's administered solely at the local level without universal vote by mail by the town clerks in the district, or whether it's a universal vote by mail, those are two different timelines. But even the timeline, if it's held town by town in the district, town clerks need time to prepare those ballots, town clerks that vote has to be warned, you know, there's a lot of things that need to occur before that election can be held.
Jay?
Deputy Secretary, do you know how many Vermont towns have voted to switch from Tuesday to Saturday?
Not off the top of my head.
And Monday night,
Monday night too?
we go to town meetings at 3 times, Saturday, Monday night, and Tuesday.
Yeah, they're all over the map.
We're all over the-
Well,
You want something, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm seeing general fund or education fund. Whenever I think of funding, I think of appropriations committees. But are there elements in that we need to concern ourselves with, or?
No, I mean, except for that, I would ask these committees be advocates for those things.
Okay,
Because regardless of, I'm gonna get out of school redistricting or out of elections. Every decision that you folks make has an operational cost and a financial cost. And we really rely on the committees of jurisdiction to help advocate for allocations, whether it's to the town clerks, to our office, or to anybody else. So, but the things that I would just flag is the districts will need support setting up a website, communication tools, and IT equipment so that citizens have access. I mean, from the Secretary of State's perspective, we believe in transparency, we believe in open government, and we believe in citizen access. So those are the things that we really wanted to emphasize about the district funding structure. There's a lot more in the district funding structure that we did not even attempt to understand or address, but from a citizen access and transparency perspective, we really see website, communication tools, and IT equipment as very, very important considerations. For the town clerks, this is considerable new work, and there is not at this moment a funding structure really put in the state system that funds town clerks. That is all funded at the municipal level and done by municipal decisions. But what is happening is this is becoming a state function that is being put a big piece on town clerks. So we believe, we don't have a proposal, that there should be some funding structure or some allocation to the towns to do this work. And that if there's a school district, there should be a school district clerk, that clerk may need additional funding over the traditional town clerk. Because there will be enhanced duties for that school district clerk.
Back to the election piece, do you know, and you may not off the top of your head, and I'm fine with the later answer, what percentage of our towns have moved to Australian ballot for town meeting? Because I know I think all of the ones in my district, but I want to be thoughtful that that is not true around the state.
We can follow up with that.
Okay, thank you.
That would be great. I think we'd all love.
Are we considered kind of wrapped up on the whole document if I ask it, or pose a general?
Well,
thing, or are we-
yeah, I'll just say, I think, not knowing all the members of both committees that well, whatever decision we make that involves money, it would only be logical to assume that we would advocate for the money if we're going to ask for a change.
I
Now,
just wanted to say that.
yeah, and I appreciate that.
Yes, the one.
You don't want an unfunded mandate?
Right.
It's really important that we have allies who understand and as you're making decisions that we, as we're testifying in front of you, are able to articulate what the cost will be, but also that and that we can be as, you know, as comprehensive and transparent about the costs. But also, you know, that those costs don't get lost as the bills move. So thank you.
Mike?
So mine's just a general comment. It's not a question. It's just, and we've touched on it, some of the documents, so it's for everybody, is that as we move forward with this, if, for instance, my district would sit with, the way I see it anyway, it looks like to me, all of Chittenden County, which includes Burlington, and no offense to my colleague from Burlington over here, but I'm certain that my district wouldn't want all 5 of our board members to be from the city of Burlington. I think they would like to see that diversity. So as we move forward with that, I think we have to be very mindful and careful to, because there already is some of that out there that people think that, and I live in Chittenden County, saying that, because my district touches Randolph County, Chittenden County, so I can say it as a Chittenden County owner or whatever, that, yeah, I wouldn't want to see Chittenden County control like all of our district.
That's the wards.
Correct. That's the way I took it, but I want to show you.
Absolutely,
Really,
absolutely.
really advocate for that, to break that up.
That's part of the proposal.
Yeah, and that was the conversation about not having the at-large.
Yeah, that's the way I took it, but I just want to
Right.
say we have to be very, very, I'm just driving that home. We got to be very mindful because that, and again, it's not picking any major cities, whether it's Rutland, Bennington, Brattleboro, even Newport, possibly St. J, Burlington, that all the power is not derived from the cities. We have to be mindful of rural Vermont as well, I believe.
So a couple quick things. Thank you, Brian. One way to save is not do a universal mail out ballot because if you don't have to print a ballot for every single person. You only have to print a percentage of those. And if anybody wants a ballot, they can certainly ask for one, and town clerks are more than willing to send one versus have them sent. So there's a huge savings. The second thing is, when the redistricting of our current school merging all happened, we had to commingle our ballots. I'd like to make sure that there's something in this law when we get ready to write it that states that each town will count their own, or each ward will count their own ballots and then report to the district clerk versus the night of election, everybody taking their school ballots and driving over a wet and snowy mountain road at 10 o'clock at night when you've closed your polls to put all your ballots together and start counting.
That would be the beauty of using the election management.
Exactly.
It just would make it much more efficient and easier
And for
for.
those littler towns that don't have voting machines, the school districts probably would now because the wards are gonna be that much bigger. So if somebody within the ward is gonna have a machine versus some little town that might not have a voting machine because of their size.
Yes.
So, yeah, so those, just be mindful, but,
And as you're thinking about this too, I would just flag, I believe that one of the reasons why school districts, the votes are commingled is so that you don't have town against town within a district. So I believe that was part of the legislative intent.
yes.
So that is something that you also may want to consider, taking your example, do we want to know how the citizens of Georgia, the town, voted versus South Burlington? Or not?
Well, I'll just say
Did that
it's
law
has
has
been
been
changed because we do not commingle in our district anymore because we voted not to because it was a nightmare the first couple of years that we did it. It was crazy. So we all voted not to commingle those ballots
As a district.
because and then keeping in mind, if one school district votes it down, same with like the same day or mailing out ballots. If one town says, I want to mail them out, the rest say, oh, no, we're not mailing them out. You don't mail out. Everybody, it's all or nothing.
Well, I would firmly recommend that this body decide whether this is a universal vote by mail election or go to your polling location or request an answer.
Allison and then Tanya.
So this has got such big implications for those who are making and deciding on the districts. So I hope you are also presenting this to both our Senate and House Education Committees. Because they need to have this too. They need to be aware.
Which committees?
So we have been asked to testify in front of Senate Education. And I was hoping to have some conversation about that. We would love to talk about this with anybody who wants to talk about it. But I just want to commend the chairs of these two committees of having a joint session because it is, I think, probably the most effective way to have these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we would get questions that we wouldn't get otherwise from the other committee. And we're all in this. I've heard more than once, if this proposal, however it is amended or changed, there's tough decisions that we're gonna have to make in the next couple of years, and there's no way around that if we're gonna go forward. Some people will not like what we decide, and some people will be overjoyed or happy to some degree.
Yeah. So Representative Morgan's point, and this is sort of what I was getting at earlier. As we ward within the district, we can certainly be mindful of making sure that every, towns are represented within the ward. But once a vote goes out to the people, I worry in these massive mega districts that actually Burlington is going to decide for the rest of Chittenden County if it goes to the voters, simply because there are more voters.
Well, that's where we have to think about the proportionality of the board.
Exactly.
Burlington may be broken up.
No, but in a district-wide vote to raise a property tax, that goes to the whole district, not just an individual ward. And so in these mega districts, it is going to happen that large towns decide for the rest of the district.
Because they have more.
Yes.
It's just population density.
Right, and that's sort of one of my concerns in these districts being so large and these districts not being proportionally population-wise, is that that's exactly what's going to happen for anything that goes out to the district-wide electorate.
Why could not the question on the ballot be specifically asked about the people that live in that district, though? Not that district. Let's just, if Burlington wants to put a swimming pool in their high school, one view of it could be, then the people that pay property taxes in that ward should be the ones that decide that, not people in 3 towns over.
Well, I think what you're talking about is a little bit what Representative Hango was talking about, because this is a huge mind shift of, instead of Burlington making a decision for Burlington, this is the Chittenden district making a decision for Chittenden district. And the people of Burlington may decide that the best place for a pool is Georgia. And that may be the district vote. The district board vote is that the Georgia high school should have the pool. But there's lots of what's happening is a culture shift on who is part of which area.
Yes, no, I just think it is important, and this is, I think, more for our colleagues in the education committee, that we are thinking proportionally about the districts as well as the wards, to exactly your point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One angle we haven't discussed too much is curriculum. And I know that there was, at least what I heard in the proposal from the governor when we had that big Wednesday meeting, it was that we would be setting curriculum standards in part at the district level. So in the same way that, and I know that our select boards, we've put out ballot measures that are kind of policy. Are we supporting, for example, a welcoming ordinance in Hartford? So have you given any thought to the idea that there could be either votes at this district level on policy, or
The way the governor's proposal has that contemplated right now is it would be at the school board meeting that those decisions will be made, not at the voter level.
so it would be made at but let's say that board, at the district level, let's say that board said, we actually don't know how we feel about that. Like, my select board has made decisions to do that, saying we're not actually sure. We then send that out and we vote yay or nay on a policy proposal. So that would that be something that
I think that's
allowed?
Policy determination that you would have to decide whether you want to allow that. And if yes, you would want to write that into the law as a similar process as the voter budget vote. That the school board district would call a vote on a money issue or a policy issue on this timeline. But in the administration proposal, that was not what would happen.
Yeah, I think an example would be like the cell phones in schools idea, like would a school board be empowered to put out a vote to the district to decide on that kind of policy, when a school board might be able to do that now at the local level? Yeah, thank you.
Well, and to Senator White's point, the flip to that is, do we then allow the voters to petition stuff onto that ballot for policy stuff as well? And are local schools still empowered to make any of their own decisions. If the school board says no cell phones in schools, but the local, the Westford school says, no, we don't want to do, like, there's so many. And I mean, we're wading into ed policy. I realize we're not in elections anymore, but I think that these are really important things for us to know and be thinking about.
And have we seen, I guess, I apologize, Mr. Chair, I haven't seen like a written proposal yet on anything, so maybe, is there you said there was legislation coming, or?
Yes.
Do we have a timeline of that?
So-
This weekend?
This weekend?
No,
That's
no, this weekend she's not issuing anything or it's closing.
Okay, well, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. That's why we're doing this meeting.
I have a quick
Lisa?
You are usually excited.
I just want to clarify something because we had talked about commingling and Representative Pincinel said what they do in their town. So I actually looked up the statutes because I'm thinking to myself, in my district, we are required to commingle. So the statutes say that a unified union school district shall commingle, but a unified school district, the voters can vote to commingle. So there are two different types of school districts, and the merged ones, I think, tended to be unified union that had to,
That's right.
by law, be commingled.
You may be doing it wrong.
Well, you might be a union
might be
school
unified.
district, because if you're one, what used to be one school district, and you didn't have any additional mergers, you did, okay. Well, you'll have to see what your school district's name is. If it's just a union school district, you could.
Because that first year of snowstorms, we said, this is not gonna work.
So, that's the difference. I can't remember why one is a unified union and one is a unified school district, but there is a distinction in Vermont statute.
It's defined.
Just the piece that I would add there is a policy decision to be made about whether the votes are commingled.
Yes.
Not directly tied to a particular community, and then that policy decision has an operational consideration.
Yes, and I think there was a very emotional reason for commingling, because you can cause great divisiveness
Yes.
within communities that are coming together for one particular purpose, which is educating the students in that district.
You had a question here?
I did, but it's sort of got answered. It's more a policy question. If a ward inside the district was looking for a specific ask for the schools that are in that ward, would we be able to set something where that ward itself could vote if it was going to raise the taxes just for that ward, not the entire district?
I think that is a fundamental policy decision, that needs to be considered.
And I think just to, rather not be an expert on the education side, but I know that the Brigham ruling about, equity schooling impacts a lot in the way different schools are funded. And I know the administration took that into account, the way they crafted this proposal for the voter budget vote. So I think any other proposal, certainly Ledge Council and others can advise on how to do that in a way that would likely be Brigham compliant.
Okay.
Diane?
So circling back to the commingling question, is there a mechanism within the software that the ballots don't have to be commingled when counted, but can be reported in a unified way and not by town or ward?
Currently, no, but we would build that.
Okay, so there is a mechanism by which we could say, no, you don't have to drive.
No,
Currently.
Whoever entered it on behalf of the town, yes. But you could draft that so that is not public information, not available. I mean, it would be a public record request exemption. And that it shall not be disclosed. I mean, there's ways to manage that, and we would manage it on this office.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure before in some future conversation, I proposed some mechanism by which we say, you don't have to physically commingle them, but we're going to report them as commingled, but that was actually possible.
We will make that possible.
and by putting, but by putting them into the system that night prevents that commingling of having to go to the,
Yes.
and commingling them. Because you can put the results into the system that night without having to.
I do not see how on any size of district, you would not want to use the election management system for this vote.
Absolutely. For any vote. I mean, been using it forever. I would say for any vote.
Yes.
I'm thinking about Senator Vyhowski's question, and it seems like, if I'm understanding correctly, we have a sense of like the potential per pupil spending based on the foundation formula. But I don't know, do we have a sense of like what the tax rate will be per voter? Because I'm not sure, I guess, that it would actually end up being a problem for necessarily, Burlington wouldn't be necessarily setting the tax rate for voters in other districts. Do you know how that's gonna work? Public tax rate?
I'm not the right person, we're not the right people to ask that, but when you're talking about the voter budget vote, which would be an additional property tax on top of the base allocation. So the district would get the base allocation from the legislature and the governor, right? And let's say that's 14,000 per pupil with the weights and everything. And then they would say, okay, this isn't enough to do what we want to do. That we need an additional 4% of the property tax. That's what the voters in the district would be deciding.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed our first bite at the apple here.
Great conversation.
Good job, Pam.
Yeah.
That's certainly illuminating.
Any last comments or questions? Jay?
I very much support meeting every Friday because we're gonna have to continue to navigate inch by inch what it is that we are considering changing as we define the various layers of local control. What is the most valuable stuff to keep? And which direction should we go between? We're actually several, both layers. Today,
Yeah. I do dig. I so dig.
I so move that we dig. Yes.
So Matt and I will get together over the weekend. We'll all be snowed in by Sunday at 1 o'clock anyway.
Got plenty of time for
And
this.
we'll figure out what the best time is Friday. If you are so inclined, we can do it at 1 for sure, but we could probably push a little earlier if we don't have a floor, but that may run up against other people's
Yeah.
schedule.
No, for sure. Let's definitely find some time to talk over the weekend and I can confer with these folks and we will definitely identify a time for a standing meeting moving forward.
Yeah,
I
and
think it's a very
our,
wise choice.
our floor times aren't always so short.
True.
So I think 1 or 1:30 is always a bit of reliable.
I look at the other end of the day. I like being able to drive home and then it's still light out.
Let's do it at 7 in the morning.
No.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Morning,
Okay.
that's like a crack of noon for
I
me.
walked in about 6:15.
07.